FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. It's Kerry Lutz. It is Wednesday, April 8th. That means it is What the Heck is Going On Wednesday with Andrew Hoffman. Shout out to my sister. It's her birthday today. Big birthday for her. And Andy, what the heck is going on here?
It's getting to the point where, like I wrote this morning, that even on a quiet day, this is what you call a quiet day. There's just so many terrifying things going on. Like, just look at these oil inventories. I mean, we're talking about after months and months of every single week, these enormous builds. Well, today they had the biggest weekly build in 30 years on top of all the other problems in the oil market. And, to the point where the Cushing storage hub is almost completely full already. And this, ironically, now is the time that the United States, that Obama decides, now we're going to be nice to Iran. We're going to cut a deal with them and get John Kerry a Nobel Prize so that we can ease the sanctions on them and they can return their 1.5 million barrels per day of oil to the market.
Great timing there, huh?
Only the United States could figure out the worst possible time to actually do the right thing.
Well, the thing is, there's so much disinformation going on. It's hard to figure out what the heck really is going on. One thing's for sure, you really can't trust these Iranians for anything. It's just crazy. What are they up to?
Why can you trust them any more than us? I mean, by the way, how many wars has Iran initiated in our lifetimes? Maybe Iran and Iraq, which is really kind of a private matter between the two of them. Meanwhile, we've been the most warlike country in the world, and we've bombed everyone in the Middle East into oblivion for false reasons. So why are they more untrustworthy than we are? But it has nothing to do with the politics of it. I'm talking about the economics of it. We're talking about we're already at 1 million barrel per day oversupply globally, and that supply is only getting larger because of not just Iran. Look at what's going on in Iraq with production, in Libya, in the shale. The production is still going up, and it's not going to stop for some time. And this is, as demand in the world is, if not falling, it's certainly stopped, and it's certainly not going up anytime soon because of what's going on with the economy. So it's the point. Again, oil is a third of the entire capital spending of the S&P 500 right now. And by the way, when you see deals like this morning, like when you see Shell is buying British gas for $70 billion, this is the exact same thing that I'm talking about that happened in the oil industry in the late 1990s, early 2000s, and what is going to happen in the mining industry. When prices go down, companies consolidate and they cut CapEx even further. And so you're going to see even bigger drops in industry spending in a sector that is so desperately needed for tax revenues.
And employment as well. You got to see
and not only employment, the high-paying jobs, the few high-paying jobs that are left in this economy.
Right. Yeah. This is really bad. Really bad.
It's across the board. And, we talk about the deformations. That was the topic we were going to go over here. Because, I've taken my cue from David Stockman's book, The Great Deformation, which I haven't read, but I'm very well aware of the concept, that because of all the money printing, it's caused these gargantuan deformations of economic activity, for the most part, oversupply of just about everything imaginable. And Wall Street certainly helped it along with its financial engineering tools, its derivatives, its securitizations, its predatory lending practices. The government's lax regulation of it, because they're kind of partners in this whole scheme to, artificially create supposed growth. And as a result, we have this massive oversupply, which isn't going away. I mean, people, you really have to, it's gotten to the point where Americans have to almost pray for war in the Middle East, because it's the only way the oil price is going to go up, unless, of course, we have hyperinflation, which in real terms, it certainly won't go up. So again, these kind of things are across the global economy. You see them. Certainly, China is the best example with their ghost cities, but it's everywhere. And that's why the deflationary trend in just about everything that, that businesses need to survive will continue. That said, the inflationary trend is completely the opposite for the 99%. I wrote today of defamation, a perfect example. Okay. My homeowner's insurance. I bought my house in May of 2007 here in Colorado. My initial premium, I looked it up, was $760 a year for homeowner's insurance. Well, I just got my newest. It's been going up every year. My newest premium is now $1,750, and the same can go for my health insurance, which even taking out the my daughter has gone up, has more than double over this time. And a big reason for it is because of ZIRP. The defamation of ZIRP has caused institutions like life insurance companies that typically generate a large portion of their income from interest income now have to pass through the fact that zero interest rates are not getting them that income to us.
Wow.
But that doesn't count in the CPI. You're not going to see that in the inflation ratings.
No, you're not. And what's the solution here?
The solution?
Yeah.
Well, you get out of the depreciating currencies before they're completely depreciated. There's nothing an insurance company can do. If you raise interest rates, which of course will never happen. I mean, it'll happen when the markets do it for the Fed because of raging inflation. But if you raise rates in the most indebted society in history, the most indebted world in history, you destroy it immediately, which is why the Fed can never raise rates, why none of these banks can. In fact, you've had 24 central banks lower rates this year alone. 24, and we're still in April.
Yeah, well, hey, everyone knows, Andy, there is no inflation now, right?
I mean, look, again, forget the definition. We've gone over a million times. The definition of inflation is what they do to the money supply. The prices are just the cause. But again, the things that they measure, and of course, how they measure them are not necessarily. I mean, the fact, for instance, that gasoline prices have gone down, they're still way higher than they were years ago. And I did an article a while back, sometime last year, showing that, oil prices are really only about 5% of your personal budget. So it's not going to change. It certainly didn't change the bill, my home insurance bill, my health insurance bill, or, just about anything in my life aside from, electronics that are luxury goods are going up in price. And that's the whole want versus need concept. The more you print money, the more it flows somehow, whether by, the homeowner's insurance method or by other means into the things that you need to live on.
And the Austrians always said that when you print money, what happens, it isn't going to necessarily increase the consumer prices. It's going to flow into items that it's going to increase prices in ways that you're not expecting it.
Well, how about housing bubbles?
Exactly.
I mean, people think of housing like it's some kind of investment. It's not. It's where you live. I mean, yes, it's become investments for the, again, because of the financial engineering, the BlackRocks of the world can come in and buy up properties with borrowed Fed money at nothing. But the fact is, it's raised the cost of living because no one could afford to buy houses anymore, certainly not with the credit situation now. And of course, the regular person has higher interest rates than ever, as opposed to the 1% that get lower interest rates than ever. And of course, what that's done, it's driven up the cost of rent, making it higher, more difficult to live in that way. Again, things that don't necessarily get shown in the CPI. And, they can take the CPI and do whatever they want. They have imputed rents. They can mess around with them to do whatever they want, seasonally adjusted, take out this, move in that, whatever they need to do to make the numbers that they base their monetary policy on, conducive. And that policy must always be zero interest rates. And in fact, it's now negative interest rates. The NERP thing is really taking hold the world around. Switzerland this morning, I mean, we're talking about hours ago, sold the first ever 10-year bond issue at negative rates. 10 years. And I saw this morning, if you could believe this, talking about deformations, Spanish treasury bond yields are now negative. Now, Spain has a housing market. They are literally at their lows. They're at 12-year lows. They've never recovered. They're still falling. Their unemployment rate is near their all-time highs. They have Catalonia, which is a quarter of the whole economy, wants to secede. They voted 88% to 4% that they want to secede last year. And this Podemos party is the front runner. They're like Syriza in Greece to win the presidency in December. And so this is a nation in complete and utter free fall, and people are paying them for the privilege of borrowing their debt. And the best part is, their GDP, debt to GDP is going over 100% as we speak. But that debt to GDP should be a lot higher because Europe, like the United States, like everyone else, is now adjusting their GDP numbers by adding in illegal things that don't generate taxes like prostitution, drug dealing, to make that number look lower. But again, everywhere you look, the finances are hideous and people are buying and buying and buying the bonds because they know of the hyperinflationary QE policies that can only get larger.
Yeah. Isn't it great?
Yeah. I mean, what could possibly go wrong?
Yeah. What could possibly go wrong? Nothing can go wrong.
I mean, these are all unprecedented experiments. And people say, well, it's not unprecedented. There's been many other fiat currencies before. Yes, of course, there have. In fact, 599 to be exact, that have all failed in one way, shape, or form. But what we're seeing now, you've never had a global fiat currency regime, and you've also never had the ability to manipulate markets. And I'm not talking about petty manipulation. I'm talking about widespread government-led, behind-the-scenes use of algorithms and derivatives and all kinds of means to make markets do what they want them to do. And again, that's what makes the deformations so big, and the deformations of wealth disparity. I mean, with each passing day, that 1% is becoming wealthier and wealthier, and the 99% is becoming less so because of all the money that's funneled into their hands. And again, I mean, what better proof of that can you see of CNBC last week hitting its all-time lowest approval rating, being on the air for 23 years, all-time low approval rating, with the stock market at an all-time high.
And we got a guy like Howard Davidowitz, who follows retail, the health of the retail sector, used to be on CNBC all the time. I don't know if you know the guy or not.
I know the guy.
Yeah, he's great,
yep.
Right? He's great, and he only tells the truth. And now you know that he's persona non grata on CNBC. They hardly ever, if ever, have the guy on there because he says, what economy are you talking about? He's got a great voice. He's a New Yorker, and he's totally irreverent. He practically calls them, 4-letter words on the on network TV. He's hysterical. I have him on whenever I can. He's difficult to get a hold of. He actually works for a living trying to turn companies around, but he goes down the list of retail basket cases, Andy, and there's just more of them than we have time for when I interview them. But Radio Shack and you just go down the list. You know what I'm talking about. They're just.
Well, we had, last year, not this year. Last year was the worst holiday season we had since 2009. And this year was worse than last year. And it was a lot worse. And on top of that, we've now had 3 straight months, December, January, February, of falling retail sales, falling personal consumption expenditures. Heck, falling factory goods orders, durable goods orders, construction spending, falling everything. And yet we're still told that there's a recovery out there, which brings me to today's Fed minutes. Now, if you recall, the last time the Fed said anything even remotely hawkish, not that it was hawkish, but that it was at least interpreted as such, was the January meeting when oil was at its lows and the dollar was soaring and everything was crashing, when the Fed completely and utterly ignored it. They came out in their statement and said, yeah, everything's fine. On pace to do whatever. We're still patient, but no change in our outlook. And then 6 weeks, 4 weeks later, when the minutes came out of that meeting, and I've said forever that these minutes are doctored beyond belief, that they literally take them and say, well, how has the market changed since the meeting? Well, let's change the minutes to make it more market friendly. Well, what do you know? When they came out with the minutes a month later, after all the economic data had really plunged, it was a complete opposite of what they had said at their statement. They weren't hawkish; they were completely dovish. And then a few weeks later, Janet Yellen went in front of Congress with what I called the most unequivocally dovish FOMC statement in memory. Followed 2 weeks later by the actual FOMC meeting in March, which was right on top of that. It was equally dovish. So now we're going to get the minutes from those. From that meeting on March 18th in a couple of hours. And desperately, the CNBCs want you to believe that there's some kind of hawkishness that's still left in Janet Yellen that yes, something is good. And this was, remember, since then, we've had this horrible unemployment report. All the data has gotten worse around the world. Interest rates have started to fall back again. So I'm curious to see how they orchestrate this. I can already see the last 2 or 3 days, despite the horrible economic data, they've got the stocks up. They've now got Fed governors saying, yes, it was the weather that caused the bad unemployment report, even though the weather has been pretty much normal this year. And the weather, by the way, is supposed to be seasonally adjusted. I'm not sure. It's only last year since they started deciding that factors that are normal seasonal factors are not normal. So, we'll see what happens here. But the fact is, the trends are just getting worse and worse. And look at all the black swans everywhere. I mean, my God, I wrote this morning about how Greece, they're crowing. They're so excited. They're so confident that they scrounge together, if you can get this incredible amount, $450 million to pay an interest payment tomorrow, which they mostly got by plundering their public pension funds. They're so excited that they made it through this payment, even though next week they owe $2.5 billion. And I wrote in my article today, I said $450 million. For 22 months, the Fed was doing QE3, and who knows what else they were doing behind the scenes, where they were printing $450 million every 6 hours for 22 months. The Chinese, since 2008, have added $9 trillion of public and institutional debt. That's $450 million every 3 hours. And yet Greece was excited that they were able to steal enough money to pay an interest payment of $450 million next week. I mean, how much more obvious is it that Grexit is coming very, very soon, and that people are whistling past the graveyard in believing that QE, unlimited QE, is going to monetize the horrific losses that are coming in PIGS bonds?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about that, Andy. It's got to come, right? Something's got to give.
Well, I mean, things are giving. That's why I just keep trying to say, when people say, well, when's it going to happen? I go, look at the currencies of the world. Look at, for instance, all the industries that are dependent on high oil prices. Look at the economic data. Look at the unemployment rates. Look at the real unemployment rates, like labor participation, real wages, those kind of things like that. It is happening now. It's just that people are waiting for the big 2008 stock market crash to say, well, that's the real crisis. But the real crisis is happening now. That's just going to be, the big explosion that ends all semblance of hope. Because, even the propaganda, no one's listening to anymore. For instance, the CNBC ratings, the presidential approval ratings, you name it. No one's listening anymore. It's just a matter of how long can they fraudulently keep, the dead banking system alive, so that people think that there's some kind of hope that something might turn around, even though mathematically it's impossible.
Yeah. The math is really becoming pretty much, I mean, it always has been between you and I, but it's becoming irrefutable, right? I mean,
well, it's economic mother nature, and more people are being subject to it on a daily basis.
Yeah, that really is what it comes down to, and it just keeps getting worse and worse.
Yeah, what happy talk. But I mean, I call it like I see it, and I've been calling it this way, by the way, since the turn of the century. And if you told me even 5 years ago we'd be sitting here today, I wouldn't have believed it, because I couldn't believe that this many currencies and commodities and could crash this hard, and debt could go up this fast. It's like you look at the U.S. debt, and it's like people are going, oh, well, maybe the deficit's going down because the debt is only $18.1 trillion. It's only gone up $300 billion so far this year. Yeah, remember that whole debt suspension?
Oh, yeah.
Well, we're still in the middle of that. They're just not allowed to say that it's going up. As soon as they get rid of that suspension, which they're going to do, it's going to be the same thing. Bam, in one day, it'll go up $200 billion. They're just hiding in smoke and mirrors, but all you have to do is just simply read and look at the facts. They're there for everyone to see.
That they are. And again, whatever happens to the price of gold, silver in the short run, not that big a concern, really, is it?
Well, of course not. I mean, how far can you take it? I mean, it's, first of all, the price of gold, by the way, is the same as it was in the beginning of 2 years ago. For everyone to say, oh, gold's getting killed. First of all, in most currencies, it's soared. And even here in the States, it's the same price it's been in 2 years, because it's below the cost of production. And, when I predicted that the industry is going to massively consolidate this year because they're going to go out of business otherwise, it's deals like Shell and British Gas, which are exactly what I'm talking about. This is why I said There's no doubt Newmont and Barrick are going to merge to start the whole thing. And then they're all going to do it because they need to fire people. They need to cut their spending. They need to shut down mines. They can't stay any longer in this business at these prices. And that's why the downside, no matter how much you believe in the deflationary hype, it can't happen because the business is dying.
Yeah, it's so obvious to me, obvious to you, but there could be a too big to fail bank that really does collapse that they can't stop. Not so much here, but in Europe could happen, and that could really bring the system down. That's my feeling.
Well, it certainly can and will happen here, but it's not going to happen here first. I mean, again, right. Where the dollar is the top of the totem pole. It's a reserve currency. The reason the dollar is going up is not because it's strong. It's because people are fleeing to its liquidity. And all these other, currency war, anyone who's conducting a currency war is going to hurt themselves far more than they're going to hurt the reserve currency. Again, we're going to be the last to go, just like I call the Dow Jones propaganda era agenda, paper, gold, silver markets, the last to go markets. The dollar and the U.S. banking system will be the last to go. And, the first is going to be Europe because the political ties are so weak right now that it could break apart at any moment. I mean, I was reading, James Turk said, he's saying, well, the Greek Easter holiday is actually a week later. It's like next week. And it's right in the middle of these $2.5 billion bond payments that they can't make, so that would be quite a good time for it to happen. And I'm not predicting it. I'm saying, where's the money coming from? And, what other time would they do it if they don't have the money? So, just keep a watch. I mean, something's going to happen. And take a look at the euro, by the way, inexorably climbing back down, down, down.
Yeah. There's no hope for the euro.
Of course not. It was doomed from the beginning. And the funny thing is it's only been around for 15 years. I love people think, oh, it's so strong, the European Union. The European Union has barely been around. In fact, it was dead. The global economy peaked almost to the month that it came into existence. They had that initial Maastricht Treaty where they set the guidelines of how you join and stay in it. You have to have low enough debt to GDP and low enough deficits and all these things. They cheated
on that. Thank you, Goldman Sachs.
Even then they weren't compliant. Even Germany wasn't compliant back then. And now no one's compliant. So they're, the strings that hold it together were tenuous 15 years ago. Now now it's hanging by a thread. I mean, look, I wrote yesterday about, I've been talking forever about all these various movements. Podemos in Spain is the most obvious because this guy, I forgot what his name, Juan Pablo Iglesias or something like that, he's going to be the next president. I mean, their presidential election is in December. I mean, Spain is going to have a Syriza-like takeover in December. We're already in April. And then, of course, is the National Front in France. They don't have a presidential election until 2017, but Marine Le Pen is way ahead, and she, too, wants to leave the euro. But then you look at, Italy with Beppe Grillo. That five-star movement already has 25% of the Italian parliament. I mean, I don't think there's a single person in all of Europe who's more vocal about his desire to get his country out of the euro. Even, published his paper yesterday listing here are the myths. So, this is exactly what will happen when we get out of the euro and we go back to the lira. And yes, there will be inflation and all these things. I mean, these things are all going to happen. And there's just no way that we're going to get through this year without something happening, and probably in Greece. And, to believe that there's going to be this unlimited QE coming out of an institution that's falling apart, that's somehow going to save financial markets. I mean, I can't even put into words the twilight zone that we become negative yields on Spanish treasury bonds. Negative.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah, and we're going to have that here too, and we already effectively do when you add all the fees in that you have at your banks. I mean, I haven't calculated what the interest is on my bank accounts. I don't have bank accounts. I have them at Schwab in my non-marginable brokerage account. But occasionally you see it says interest, and the interest will be like 30 cents. And I'm like, well, that's for a month, right? Or is it for 2 months? I mean, we already have no interest rates here and all the fees that get piled on. So we're at negative interest rates effectively. And, at what point do people realize, why are you holding your money in insolvent banks that you have to pay to keep your money there when you could just take it out, or better yet, put it in real money?
Yeah. We pretty much have no interest rates now. Anyway, you got to be prepared. You got to get ready for this. It's right around the corner. And if you think it's not, you're kidding yourself. Make sure you take a look at milesfranklin.com and Andy's regular missives and his audio blog, as well as Bill Halter's. And while you're at it, come over to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Take a look at what our webmaster, Stefan, does every day. It's really quite remarkable. We're talking hundreds of articles a week trying to get you the truth. Hopefully your eyes are open to it. Sign up for our webinars, our mailing list, and get ready. And Andy, we will talk to you next week.
Look forward to it.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next. FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.